Dictator became easy prey for the big foaming waves that crashed over the deck, splintering the guardrail and washing it overboard. As the ship pitched and rolled heavily, the high waves smashed two of her lifeboats, tearing them away from the davits and sweeping them into the raging seas. As the storm subsided, it became apparent that the aging sailing vessel had sprung a leak. The crew manned the steam pumps, but they also had been damaged by the storm. The Dictator was in trouble. But Captain Jorgensen, who had experienced this kind of danger before, ordered the crew to repair the pumps. And when that was not possible, he ordered them to work the pumps manually. He was determined to reach West Hartlepool on time. But weather was against the luckless Dictator and every other ship that sailed the South Atlantic that winter. Nature, it seemed, had unleashed her most violent fury as storm upon storm raked the eastern seaboard from Florida all the way up to New Jersey. And then, on the 23rd of March, a hurricane at Bermuda, with blinding rain, treacherous lightning, and fierce squalls, moved toward the United States and directly into the path of the ill-fated Dictator. The Norwegian vessel, groaning and straining as powerful waves smashed against her weakened hull, fought valiantly against the elements. Hurricane-force winds and furious waves split their violence against the already battered and beaten vessel. The crew manned the pumps, but despite their best efforts, they could not stem the flow of water coming into the leaking barge. The beleaguered ship was now taking on water at the rate of 2 inches per hour. And the crew knew they were fighting a losing battle. They were ominously aware of their peril. First Mate Cornelius Nielsen confronted Captain Jorgensen. Sir, we cannot stop the leaks, and the men are exhausted from working the pumps. They want us to change course for a safe port in America. Captain Jorgensen, who'd been on the quarterdeck virtually without sleep since the first storm hit the vessel, responded. I'm aware that everyone is tired, Mr. Nielsen, myself included. If the storm subsides, we can make adequate repairs. In the meantime, we will stay the course. Captain, I must warn you, things are quite serious. This old ship is hurt, badly. I seriously doubt, that we can make it safely to England without repairs. I am aware of the damage, Mr. Nielsen, and the danger, and the deadline. We will stay the course. Sir, there are murmurings amongst the crew. Some of the men are refusing to work unless you go in for repairs. Captain Jorgensen frowned and pondered. I see. Well then, Mr. Nielsen, tell the men that we will go into Hampton Roads in Virginia for repairs. We should find good facilities in Norfolk. Captain Jorgensen's decision to seek repairs was greeted with enthusiasm by the crew. And even Joanna, who had felt the tension of hostility building up among the crew, was relieved when he told her of his command. In the early morning hours of March 27th, the bark Dictator lumbered into the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. The weather was rainy and thick, the seas tumultuous, and tropical storm-force winds ripped into the rigging. Captain Jorgensen was sailing cautiously, but by dead reckoning, for he had been several days without the benefit of the sun and stars for navigation. He believed himself to be in the vicinity of the Cape Charles lightship, but he believed wrongly. Unknown to Jorgensen, he was actually in the vicinity of False Cape, some 22 miles farther south, and perilously closer to shore. It was the responsibility of the leadsman to keep the captain informed of the water's depth. This morning, his shouts were ominous. By the deep! 10 fathoms, sir! Signaling that they were in water only 60 feet deep. By the deep! 6 fathoms, sir! 36 feet. By the deep! 4 fathoms, sir! 24 feet. But before the captain could correct his course, he heard the keel of the dictator scrape the bottom. Realizing the inevitable, Jorgensen turned the ship directly toward land in an effort to get her as close as possible to the beach. The dictator quivered visibly, and in a moment, she came to a solid standstill on the outer edge of a sandbar not 350 yards from this very shore. An anguished silence fell over the ship. Jorgensen ruptured the silence. "Cut away the mainmast!" he barked out, in hopes of relieving the ship of her heavy topside. A seaman grabbed an axe and with a heavy blow severed the lanyards and the rigging. Abetted by the violent wind, the mainmast snapped off just above the deck, taking the fore and mizzen topmast with it as it fell. The mast, their rigging and sails smashed the Dictator's 2 remaining lifeboats as they fell across the deck and over the side. Only one small 16-foot sharp stern boat was left intact for their rescue. Jorgensen went to his cabin, where his wife was trying to comfort their frightened and crying son. There, in the midst of the tempestuous seas, he knelt on the cabin floor and embraced them both. "Oh, Jorgen," cried Johanna, "God help us!" "We are hard aground, Johanna, but I can see shore. Don't be afraid. Rescue cannot be far away. In the meantime, Johanna, I want you to put on one of my suits. That dress will be too cumbersome on the slippery deck." His real concern, however, was that her dress would be too cumbersome should she find herself swimming in the freezing March Atlantic Ocean. On shore, a surfman from the SeaTac life-saving station spotted the grounded ship, and by 10:45, the life-saving crew, led by Keeper Edward Drinkwater, was on the beach, setting up. In those days, the principal mechanism for rescuing the crew of a shipwreck was called a breeches buoy. It worked like this. A small cannon called a Lyle gun was loaded with a projectile. Tied to that projectile was a small rope. The gun was fired, hurling the projectile and the rope over the bow of the ship. Once retrieved by the ship's crew, this line was pulled in from shore, where, attached to the other end, was a block and tackle, with a sturdy rope threaded through it. This block assembly, when mounted to one of the ship's tall masts, created a continuous rope line between the ship and the shore. From there, it operated much like a clothesline between tenement apartment buildings. With the rescue line secure, the life-saving crew would send out the buoy. Now, this was a life ring, life preserver, if you will, to which a heavy pair of canvas breeches was attached at the bottom, like a giant pair of shorts. This breeches buoy was then threaded out to the ship, where a member of the crew would be settled into the breeches. Then, with the aid of both the ship and the beach, the line would be pulled into shore. In this way, an entire crew could be rescued, one seaman at a time. "Load the Lyle gun," barked Drinkwater. "Number 7 line." Once the gun was loaded, they waited, hoping for a break in the driving rain. Finally, he gave the order. "On my mark! 3, 2, 1, fire!" Unfortunately, they fired directly into the dead eye of the oncoming wind, and the projectile fell sadly 40 yards short. "Try it again, number 4 line." This time, using the smallest line they had available, he gave the order. "On my mark! 3, 2, 1, fire!" The projectile whizzed toward the bark, but was equally unsuccessful. By this time, a crowd had begun to gather. Most of them guests of the oceanfront's new and only hotel, the Princess Anne. These spectators were unaccustomed to the brutality that nature can inflict on men who make their living by the sea. They were both horrified and mesmerized by the drama that was unfolding before them. We're told that some cried, some knelt in the sand and prayed, but most stood silently on the beach, watching what was becoming literally a struggle for life and death. It was around noon, and while Drinkwater contemplated what to do next, he noticed an empty barrel with a line attached to it being dropped over the side of the Dictator. As the barrel floated toward shore, Drinkwater ordered that the Lyle gun be loaded and a line fired across the barrel. "On my mark! 3, 2, 1, fire! This time, the projectile found its mark, and in short order, the surfmen had pulled the barrel to shore. The block assembly was tied to the barrel, and the ship's crew dragged it against the surf back to the ship and successfully mounted it to the starboard mizzen shroud. Captain Jorgensen selected seaman Jacob Mell to be the first man to board the breech's buoy, and on the signal from Drinkwater, the rescue party began hauling him ashore. As the seaman was being pulled to shore on the breech's buoy, the pounding sea shifted the Dictator so that she was now nearly parallel with the shore. Reeling from the impact of the pounding waves, the ship now began rolling from side to side like a giant pendulum. When the ship rocked away from the shore, the line would suddenly tighten, catapulting the breeches and the sailor high into the air. But when the vessel leaned shoreward, the line went slack, and Seaman Mel was plunged into the icy and violent surf. The surfmen and their helpers on the beach tried to keep the hauling lines taut, but they couldn't compensate for the rolling action of the ship. It became apparent that this would not work, and to continue this effort would be lethal. Mel was literally being beaten to death on the ocean's surface. The signal was given to haul Seaman Mel back to the Dictator. He was half drowned and nearly unconscious.